You're listening to the Fierce Fatty Podcast, episode 162. Fat people barred from home ownership, adoption, and more. Let's do it!
Perfect.
Hello and welcome to this episode. I hope you're feeling splendid. You're having a good day, a good time, a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, a good middle of the night, whenever you're listening to me. Welcome to this episode. I had an email from Susanna and it has inspired me to do this episode. And actually, I've been made aware of some things that I didn't know previously. And I'm sure that you didn't know about maybe some of these or maybe all of these before, the ways that fat people are barred from life. And Susanna wrote me an email, which is just absolutely horrific and frustrating and mind-boggling. So I want to start this episode off with a trigger warning. We're going to be talking about ways that fat people are discriminated against that we might not have thought about, maybe not on the day-to-day basis that we think about, in regards to accessibility, in regards to seating and the doctor's office and things like that. And obviously all of that is absolutely unacceptable, but there's other ways that we haven't spoken about before. And so if that's not feeling great for you today, then skip this episode, because it might be a little bit much. So let me read this email from Susanna. Susanna says, I am a faithful listener of your podcast. Thank you. I am a super fat person trying to buy a house in Ireland. Ireland is the only European country that requires a mortgage protection insurance. So mortgage protection insurance, this is me. So MPI is a type of insurance policy that helps your family make your monthly mortgage payments if you, the policyholder and mortgage borrower, die before your mortgage is fully paid off. So basically, if you are someone who dies and you have a mortgage, you've just taken out the mortgage, and so that mortgage protection insurance will pay off the policy, from what I understand. So Ireland is the only country that requires MPI, mortgage protection insurance. Although looking into this, I've seen someone say the same thing has happened in Poland. So it might be a different name of insurance, or there might be just standard insurance, because you might need standard life insurance, and so there might be some differences which also mean that other people in Europe and the world are discriminated in this way. Okay, so, and it appears that people over a BMI, and so, by the way, I'm going to be mentioning BMIs in this episode because I thought about taking them out, but then I thought it might be helpful for those who are looking into these processes themselves to know whether they are at the cutoff or not. So heads up, I'm going to be talking about BMIs. Okay, so, and it appears that people over BMI of 45, like myself, cannot obtain the mortgage protection and therefore cannot obtain the mortgage protection insurance and therefore not buy a house. Having spoken to a lawyer, this is legal discrimination, so I cannot fight it in court. This is what they wrote me. And so a quote from the insurance company. I have reviewed the file. I'm sorry that the customer is not happy with our decision. When the medical details were assessed, account was taken of the following: the BMI of 48. We did not seek a GP report as the reason for the declinature was based solely on the body mass index disclosed on the application form. If any of the details are incorrect, please advise and we would be happy to review same again. For this reason, and by application of standard underwriting guidelines, it was necessary to decline this application for life cover. This decision is standard practice in the life insurance industry and is based on tables of risk which have been compiled from actuarial experience by insurance companies worldwide. I'm sorry we could not be of more help in this instance. Should you have any further queries at all, do not hesitate to contact us. Go fuck yourself. They refused to obtain a doctor's report by their own words because they view fatness as a disease in itself, as you discussed in a previous episode. And then Susanna links to another person article, another person who's experienced the same thing, an article from the Irish Times about a bank refusing to release mortgage for a woman deemed at high COVID risk due to her weight. Susanna continues, basically Irish banks could waive this requirement, but they don't because they believe based on my body size or fat people in general, I will die prematurely. Maybe that could be of interest to you for one of your podcast episodes. Thank you for your time. Your podcast is the only one who gives me faith that there are still decent people out there because living in a fat body means people usually show me their worst side. Yours respectfully, Susanna. The link that Susanna shared goes to... it says, bank refuses to release mortgage for woman deemed at higher COVID risk. Woman says she's being penalised for being fat. I'm replacing the O words, by the way, being fat following the birth of her child. A bank has refused to release a mortgage loan to a woman seeking to buy a house over an issue connected to her mortgage protection policy. The woman told the Irish Times she was refused cover by life insurance companies in the Republic, so the Republic of Ireland. So if you think about Ireland, if you're not familiar, it's an island. There's the Republic, which is in the 3/4 of Ireland is the Republic of Ireland, and then in the top right-hand northeast corner is Northern Ireland, which is classed as the UK because that area is still colonized by the UK. The companies in the Republic of Ireland, she was refused coverage because they said that her BMI placed her at greater risk for COVID-19 complications. By the way, a study has just come out to look at all the studies that said that fat people are higher risk from COVID. What do you think it found? We're not. Surprise! Fucking surprise! We don't have that information to show that fat people, if we look at this study, what it showed, I'll talk about it in more detail later, but this study, what it showed is that because we needed quick information in the times of COVID, the studies that showed a link between COVID outcomes and risks and all that type of stuff that said that fatness was a risk factor, they were of poor quality and they didn't control for certain things. Same with the H1N1 bird flu, wasn't it bird flu? Yeah. They said when that epidemic was happening that fat people were a higher risk, fatness caused increased deaths, etc. Afterwards, when they had the time, they looked at these studies again. They controlled for weight bias. And so they controlled for time when people got treatment. And so if fat people were treated the same as thin people, the outcomes were identical. So anyway, this is not based on science. Continuing, however, despite the woman subsequently sourcing cover with a UK-based insurer, her bank is still refusing to release the mortgage, she said. Yeah, so she probably went to the north of Ireland. She might have gone to England and got a policy from the north. And so this is literally the difference between walking 10 minutes somewhere else and you're in a different country, but it's ridiculous. Basically, if you've got a UK-based insurer saying we'll cover you, the bank is saying no, it needs to be someone from the Republic. Every bank in the Republic is saying we do not cover fat people. So the woman in her early 30s had a baby early last year and said her BMI had been high since the birth. She pointed out that she'd been medically assessed by a nurse working on behalf of a UK-based insurance company. Subsequently offered cover for a 10-year period. Despite this, her bank said this cover was insufficient. The bank's refusal to let her draw down the mortgage was putting the purchase of the home she is under contract by at serious risk. She says, I'm at the end of my tether, but I'm not giving up without a fight. I had a baby in 2020 and I haven't lost the baby weight. I know that, but the insurance companies and now the bank are penalizing me for that. The woman who asked not to be named said, the woman said she had permanent pensionable job with death in service benefits substantially higher than the value of the mortgage of 116,000 euros that she applied for. She also said that she has separate financial safety net in place and now had mortgage protection cover for over 10 years. She has also restructured the term of the proposed mortgage, reducing by it to 16 years. So what? So the mortgage is only over 16 years and they're so worried that she's about to die because she has a BMI of a certain amount. They're still refused. It doesn't make sense. She says, I'm also putting down a huge chunk of savings and the loan to value ratio is less than 80%. However, the bank has refused to budge. The woman said she went sale agreed on what would be her first home last December and was set to move out of her rented accommodation at the end of March. I have literally nowhere else to go and the vendor is extremely frustrated and wants to put it back on the market. I would have to sleep on my parents' couch from Saturday. Absolutely outrageous. I replied to Susanna. I don't know if this is going to help anyone, but I just want to let you know of a resource. So I said to Susanna, thanks so much for reaching out. I'm furious for you. This is absolutely unacceptable and vile. I'm so sorry you're experiencing this. The latest episode of the podcast comes out this week and is about legal stuff, being fat in the workplace. The only way around this is that your lawyer may not be familiar with is suing on the grounds of their definition of fatness as a disease. This would fall under disability discrimination. There is an organization that may be able to help or not, but it's in the US. It's called FLAIR. So flairproject.org. FLAIR Project are the people who are working with Dove and is it ASDA or NAFA to work on laws to protect fat people in the US. So that's a thing. I said some of the things to Susanna and asked if she would like me to use this in the podcast episode. And she said, yes, absolutely would like it. And that she had reached out to Flair and had booked a chat with them. So thing is though, I don't know, I really hope that this can get resolved because not being able to buy a home in your country is wicked. It's wickedly awful. Talk about systemic discrimination. It makes me feel sick that this is happening. And someone else. So I put a story up and I asked, has anyone else had experience with this? What about other discrimination that we might not have thought about? And someone else said that there was a guy in Poland who couldn't buy a house because of the same thing. He couldn't get insurance because insurers seem to think that fat people are about to die at any moment. And it's so interesting, like that response, from that insurance company saying the decision is standard practice and is based on tables of risk, which have been compiled from actuarial experience by insurance companies worldwide. It's not true. It's not true that fat people are dying younger. If you're looking at the health of a person, if the doctor says their health is good, why are we not using that information versus an arbitrary number? And we know the insurance companies are the genesis of BMI being used to profit from fatness and BMI being established as a guide for health. And Louis Dublin from MetLife in the 1930s, he is the guy that has started this, and it is not from good data. It drives me bananas. So I asked people, what other things have you seen? And so people have said, I'm just going to read them out and then I'm going to go into each one. You can't work as a nurse in Arab countries if your BMI is over 30. In the US, you can't donate your body for scientific research if you're over a certain BMI. 3 times the price of health insurance with less coverage based on BMI, with good labs and no medical issues. I've heard of adoption agencies not placing kids with parents who are fat. I work with under 18s, and the systemic barriers to size in schools is disturbing. Someone else said basics, furniture, roller coasters, transit, airplanes don't fit us safely and comfortably. There was a man in Poland who wanted to buy a flat but didn't get a loan. Okay, so he didn't get the mortgage. You had to get you had to get the insurance along with the loan, and they guessed that he wouldn't live long enough. So he got the loan but not the insurance. Hospital social worker here, huge uptick in rehab, long care, placement, etc., denying long-term care, etc., denying placement due to size. Women needing fertility help are denied due to BMI in Canada. You can't adopt in the UK if your BMI is over their criteria, 40, I think. I think adopting children from other countries as well as some fertility treatments. There are areas in the UK and Ireland where one can't adopt a child if your BMI is, quote, high. Can't get life, salary or health insurance in the UK, nor mortgage protection and payment protection insurance. In Canada, denied health insurance due to BMI by 2 separate companies. So I've picked a few of these to look into and see what we know about it. All of those are absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. So let's start with adoption. What do we know about adoption? So looking into it, it's not a absolute rule that you cannot adopt if your BMI is over 40. By the way, if you're not familiar with BMI, a BMI of 40 isn't high, right? It's not, it's going to affect a lot of people, right? It's just, the cutoff is, I think the cutoff is the 40 between someone who is classified as O-word versus morbidly O-word, which is all just made up. It's just absolute garbage, bullshit, dog shit. I fucking hate it. It's made up shit, and people are being using that to discriminate against people. And so basically, from what I found, I'm going to give you quotes from different articles. What I found is there are many instances of people being denied. There are instances of people being told to lose weight, them going away, losing weight, and then getting the kid. There are instances where it is seen as a negative factor, and so a social worker needs to assess if the fat person knows that they're a disgusting fat person and promises to not make the child fat, and then they will be accepted. There is no worldwide definite cutoff. So if you're looking to adopt and you have a BMI around 40 or more than 40, please don't feel disheartened that it's not a possibility for you. There will be places where they will say no, and there will be places where they will say yes, and there will be places where they say maybe. Okay, so here's a post from the Guardian. Too fat to adopt. The married teetotal couple rejected by council because of man's weight. Charlotte and Damien Hall are teetotal non-smokers with a stable 11-year marriage behind them. She has a career as a nanny and he shares her love of children. They would appear to be ideal candidates as adopters for a child in need of a new family. But yesterday it emerged that Leeds City Council, so this is in the UK by the way, has rejected the Halls because he is too fat. The couple has approached the authority about adoption after health checks were informed. His 6'1" physique, they're giving his weight physique, gave him a body mass index of 42. Again, it's a low number. So his BMI is 42, categorized as morbidly O and at increased risk of serious illness or death. It's so ironic. Increased risk of serious illness and death due to weight bias, like this. Due to being forced to lose weight, yo-yo dieting, due to medical stigma. The couple were told that if his BMI dropped below 40 and he was able to maintain the weight loss, they would be reconsidered. Again, something that is not possible for the vast majority of people. which is also at a risk to his health because intentionally losing weight has negative side effects. In a letter to the local authority, told the Halls, "We are unable to progress an application from you at this time. This is due to the concerns that the medical advisors have expressed regarding Mr. Hall's weight. We will require Mr. Hall to have a further medical in 6 months' time, which will be considered by a medical advisor." It added that the adoption panel was unlikely to approve applicants with a BMI over 40 because of the long-term health risks. A spokeswoman said, quote, "The council's adoption service has a legal responsibility to ensure that its looked after children are placed with adopters who are able to provide the best possible lifelong care. Part of this responsibility is advice for applicants on a range of suitability criteria, including any health or lifestyle issues which may impact on an applicant's long-term ability to adopt." Notice, let's look at this. We have a legal responsibility. This is what the adoption agency. We have a legal responsibility to ensure that children are placed with adopters who are able to provide the best care. So fat people can't provide the best care because fatness automatically means that a lack of health. So they're saying including health or lifestyle issues. Also, apparently, fatness is a lifestyle issue. When we know that fatness is just a normal way of having a body. And also, so the doctors said, Mr. Hall has XYZ health problems. They've just said he happens to live in a fat body. And so because he happens to live in a fat body with no medical issues, with a, they're saying teetotal, what do they say, non-smoking, absolutely everything else is suitable, apart from the fact that they believe that fatness equals ill health, equals dying prematurely, equals not being able to look after children. And that is wrong. So elsewhere in the UK, in Lincolnshire talked about size. And so the Lincolnshire County Council follows the guidelines from the British Association for Adoption and Fostering and the Chief Medical Officer regarding weight, and for applicants with a BMI of over 40 would suggest that they need to make efforts to reduce their weight before applying. So in Lincolnshire, they say you need to have a BMI of 40. And if you don't, you need to make efforts to reduce your weight. And then they say there is no weight which would definitely preclude anyone from adopting. No families were rejected by Lincolnshire County Council because they failed to meet its weight or BMI criteria in 2019 or between 2015 and 2019. So in Lincolnshire, which is a large county in the UK, no one was rejected because of weight. I wonder though, if people were rejected due to health. If someone was fat and they also happen to have another health condition, say if they had type 2 diabetes, which is associated with fatness, not caused by fatness, associated by fatness, and that was the reason. So I don't know, but that seems like they are more flexible. Here is a document, links to everything in the show notes, by the way. So you can find this if you want to subject your poor brain to this bullshit. There's a guide here that has been created on guidance on fat adopters. And so this is for social workers. And this is saying, this is how we screen fat people. It is so fucking offensive. So I'm scrolling down to point 4. Evidence to be gathered during social worker assessment of O-word applicants. There are suggested questions. And so they were saying we want to understand their knowledge and understanding, their attitudes, their behaviors, and what outcomes have come from your time with this person. So these are the questions they're asking. What does the applicant understand about the causes of being fat and how these causes contribute to ill health? I mean, what if I wanted to adopt? I don't. What if I did and they interviewed me? I don't think I could lie and say it's just a normal way to have a body. and contribution to ill health is yo-yo dieting and the way society treats fat people. The next question, in the circumstances of the applicant, what factors or combination of factors do they think have caused them to be fat? And I would say it's just a normal way of having a body. And presumably the person would be like, denies responsibility for being fat. What does the applicant understand by a healthy diet for their family? Are they asking the same thing to thin people? No. Are other family members fat? What the fuck has that got to do with anything? In the case of foster carers applying to become adopters, have previous children placed with them gained excessive weight? It's just so fucked up. Have they gained excessive weight? Well, let's have a think. Let's have a think about this. Children who are in foster care, who are up for adoption, what do we think they could have experienced? Trauma! What type of trauma could they have experienced? I don't know. Let's think. Maybe they could have experienced food insecurity. Maybe they came from poverty. Maybe they came from a place where they were not able to access food freely. Maybe they were in a group home where they didn't have a variety of food to have access to. And then what might happen if they get into a home where they have a little bit more freedom, where they have a little bit more resources potentially? What might they do? The same thing that we all do when we are getting out of diet land. How might they comfort themselves? How might wouldn't you, if you were looking after a child, I would be giving them so much of everything. I'd be giving them all the delicious food, the most comfortable bed, like toys that they loved, nice clothes, like within what I could afford. Wouldn't you? But you would be treating them like you would someone that needed love and care. And an outcome of that might mean that they have a bigger body or not. And so you could be doing the exact things that child needs, giving a secure food source, and they have gained weight. And now it's like, well, sorry, the last kid that you had, who you were doing the absolute best for, is chubby, so you're a bad parent. No, absolutely not. So fucked up. Okay, other things. Attitudes. What is the applicant's attitude to physical exercise currently? Because we all know fat people never exercise. Does the applicant plan to lose weight? Has the applicant tried to lose weight? How would the applicant support a child in their care who was fat and needs help to lose weight? How would they help a child to lose weight? This is abusive. Can you imagine? Oh my God. Talk about trying to fuck up the kid even more. Gets into an adoption placement and then is put on a fucking diet after the shit that child might have gone through. No, thank you. Behaviors. What is the applicant currently doing in order to live a healthy lifestyle? In terms, okay, so what they define a healthy lifestyle. How do they define a healthy lifestyle? Their dietary intake and their physical activity, because there is no other version of health. Has this changed over time? Is the applicant able to provide a child with physical daily activity? How would they do that? What is the applicant's capacity to engage in physical activity? Do they go to the gym? How often? Do they become breathless climbing a flight of stairs? No. Does the applicant have time and resources to successfully lose weight? No, because weight loss doesn't work. Are they receiving support from Weight Watchers? You have got to be fucking kidding me. Are they receiving support? And they're saying from their partner, from their GP, from the staff at the gym, from slimming organisations such as Weight Watchers. What are the chances that Weight Watchers has embedded themselves into the adoption agencies? This is absolutely horrific. And then, okay, so then the outcomes from this meeting. So the outcomes, next time you meet with them. How much weight has the applicant lost? Over what period of time? How have they achieved this? Could this be continued when a child is placed with them? Fuck you, whoever wrote this. I hate it. It is so stigmatizing. It is so offensive. It is so wrong. It's just wrong. It is not helping anyone. It's not helping kids. Fuck that person. Fucking hate them. Okay, so a story from someone who, in the UK, we were turned down for adoption for being O-word. Okay, so the guy says, we made contact with Bernardo's. This is in the UK, by the way. Bernardo's is a children's charity. And at first, nothing was said. We were told we'd be perfect for adoption as we were young and we had good jobs. It was only after a meeting with our area manager a few weeks later that she explained we would need to lose weight as it was a requirement. She explained that the medical advisor would reject our application otherwise, as it was important to promote a healthy image to children that we would adopt. Great way to promote a healthy image is through fucking dieting and hating your body. Good work. At first, we challenged it, but the agency insisted it was non-negotiable. My wife and I couldn't help but feel incredibly hurt and upset, as we knew our body shape could and would never impact our ability to parent. Exactly. We were both given a weight target of a stone to lose, which is 14 pounds, which would be confirmed through medical examinations. For fuck's sake, the pressure it placed on us was unmeasurable. We felt guilty whenever we ate, and there would be tension if one of us lost weight but the other didn't. At times we even considered giving up as it was so hard, but we were determined to do it as we desperately wanted to be parents. So it continues on. Basically, they lost weight temporarily. They adopted a child who is thriving. They then wanted to adopt again. And instead of looking at their past experience, how well is that child doing? You know, has the child died because the parents are so fat and disgusting that they, just ate the baby or whatever? Turns out not. The child is thriving. But what did they have to do? Lose weight. And so that's where they left it off, is in the process again of losing weight temporarily, just to meet this arbitrary fucked up definition of what health is. Fun times. Okay, so here's a story from the US. The notoriously complex adoption process has just got even harder for one man who claims his weight led to a judge deem him ineligible to adopt. Gary Stocklaufer told blah, blah, blah in Kansas City, Missouri, that a family court ruled him unfit adoptive parent because of his weight. Stocklaufer wants to adopt his infant cousin because the mother is unable to care for the child. His cousin. We all know the best thing for children is to stay with family. If not, then other family. No, because you're too fucking fat. Quote, it was a doctor that said, if someone is fat and therefore has diabetes, because obviously we all know all fat people have diabetes, and has had 2 heart attacks, of course, because we all know that fat people have 2 heart attacks, well, that's a big risk for that kid. If the circumstance in the given case is that this kid isn't going to get long-term loving home, then you have to make a tough judgment. Go fuck yourself. That's adoption. IVF. Quote from a National Post piece, should there be a weight cut off for IVF? Firestorm of debate over denying fertility treatments to fat women. So in BC, in Canada, private IVF clinics outside hospitals are not permitted to perform egg retrievals in women with a BMI over 38. So heartbreaking. Alberta, which is the province over, has no restrictions. This is a quote from a doctor. To me, it's a medical issue. It's not a discrimination issue. Yes, it fucking is. Fat women are running risks in pregnancy. And if they're running risks in pregnancy, why should you be helping them get pregnant? Eugenics! Oh, hello, eugenics. Dr. Laskin, who's the person who said this, who is a giant human turd, has a BMI cutoff of 35. Mine is a brick wall, he said. Other clients will go as Other clinics will go as high as 40. Some have no cutoff. Dr. Laskin says fatness makes IVF technically more difficult. Boo-hoo! Dr. Laskin, it's too hard. I can't do it. I only work on the easy patients. With IVF, eggs are retrieved from the woman's ovaries via an ultrasound-guided needle. But you may have difficulty getting to the ovary. Dr. Laskin said the ovaries tend to be pushed up higher in the woman's anatomy, and excess fat can make it harder to visualize the ovaries on ultrasound. Oh, boo-hoo. Get a better ultrasound machine. Try harder. What a weird way to say I lack skills. And I don't give a shit. I only want to do easy things. He continues... Fat women also tend to respond more poorly to fertility drugs. You have to use a lot more drug to get a reasonable response. Oh dear. Oh, you have to give them 2 pills instead of 1. Oh, such a hardship, Dr. Laskin. Could that be? Let's use some critical thinking skills. Let's use them, Dr. Laskin. Could it be that the drugs were not made for fat people? They were created with thin people in mind. They were tested on thin bodies. And that is not the problem of the fat people. That's the problem of the drug companies, of the medical establishment. And so what do we do to fix that? Do we deny people the ability to have children? Or do we work harder to fix this issue? My spidey senses are saying we work harder. And if you want to know more about fertility, go to Nicola Salmon, Nicola Salmon, Fat Positive Fertility, and she will school you on all of the bullshit. So I hope Dr. Laskin goes in the bin, because that's where Dr. Laskin belongs. There's a piece by the New York Times, and it talks about when you're told you're too fat to get pregnant. By the way, in that last story, there was a lot of women. It's not just women who access IVF treatment and who get pregnant. So just a heads up. Okay, so this New York Times piece, quote, during their first appointment at a large Boston fertility clinic, Balzano says the reproductive endocrinologist was cold and unsmiling as she reviewed the couple's medical history. Her first question was whether Balzano was ovulating. Irregular ovulation when a woman's ovaries fail to release eggs during the appropriate phase of the menstrual cycle, or other genders, is one of the most common causes of infertility. But Balzano wasn't sure. It was difficult to track her erratic cycles at home. The specialist asked no follow-up questions. It's your weight, she said. The doctor, Balzano was convinced, had reduced her to a single characteristic. It was like, wait, there might be something else wrong, she recalls. My mum isn't fat, but she only had 1 pregnancy and she was never on birth control. Couldn't there be something else going on here? Nick was furious. I know plenty of larger women who have been pregnant without any problems, he says. This didn't make any sense, but they both say the doctor who declined my interview request on the basis of patient confidentiality was adamant. I would never give you IVF, they recall her saying. You're too fat, have more sex, and lose the weight. Although Balzano didn't know it when she made the appointment, the clinic that would have performed the procedure had a policy against providing IVF to patients with a BMI above 45. Gina's was 51.2. In that decision, it followed much of the fertilities industries, including half of the 20 largest clinics in the United States. According to Fertility IQ, an online clearinghouse of information on fertility providers nationwide. At some clinics, the cutoff for treatment is a BMI of 50, often classed as, quote, extreme or severe O word. At others, it's much lower. Chelsea Ritchie is now the mother of twins in Ham Lake, Minnesota, or Minneapolis, I don't know, got a call from a nurse the day before her initial appointment with a fertility doctor in 2011. She said, the doctor only sees patients with a BMI under 30, so you need to lose 22 pounds, Richie recalls. The doctor told me that his cutoff for seeing patients is actually a BMI of 35, though he won't do IVF unless they're under 30. Richie subsequently conceived her twins after going to a different clinic. The belief that a high body weight causes infertility and its corollary that weight loss is necessary to resolve infertility underpin almost every interaction a heavy woman will have with reproductive healthcare industry. Yet the speciality's two governing organizations, the American Society for Reproductive Medicine and the Society for Assistive Reproductive Technology, have not established any guidelines on whether treatment should be declined on the basis of weight. And I know someone in BC where I am, British Columbia and Vancouver in Canada, who was devastated by being turned down because of her weight for IVF. She ended up having 2 children naturally, but it was just heartbreaking. So other insurance, we have weight absolutely impacts the ability to get insurance and to get the best coverage and to get the cheapest coverage. So I found a table which looks at the maximum weight for standard premiums, and this is all genders. And so if you are, it's so low. To get standard premiums from Manulife, you need to be, if you're 5'8", let's just do it on 5'8", because it's, because it's any gender. 5'8" person. Actually, let's do 5'7". 5'8" is slightly covered up. 5'7". So if you're 5'7", if you wanted to get insured by Manulife, you need to be 161 pounds. For Sun Life, 211. SSQ insurance, 238. And that's for standard premiums. That doesn't mean that you're not going to get insurance if you're over 161 pounds at Manulife. It means that you have to pay more. But there will be cut-offs. For many places, which will not insure people at all. And also there are insurance companies which you don't need a medical. So insurance, depending on where you are, you will almost likely definitely be charged more if you have a bigger body. And some places you'll be denied totally, and some places weight is not a consideration. Let's move to work. So here's a piece from Bloomberg. Weight discrimination remains legal in most of the US and the world. Specific protections can spur better treatment. And so this is talking about what laws we have at the moment, and how people in places that have laws have used them to protect themselves from anti-fat bias. Michigan's law made possible a lawsuit resolved on undisclosed terms by a store manager for the luxury retailer Coach, who alleged that the company had promoted her when she was petite, then fired her when she wasn't, after it first pressured her to take the weight loss hormones, get bariatric surgery, and eat more lean cuisines. In San Francisco, a settlement with an aerobics instructor forced Jazzercise Inc. to stop requiring its dance fitness teachers to, quote, look leaner than the public. You can't see it if you're listening, but I'm making eyes at that. This is from a piece from the Texas Tribune. At Victoria Hospital, Victoria in Texas in the US, fat job candidates need not apply. A Victoria hospital already embroiled in a racial discrimination lawsuit has instituted a highly unusual hiring policy. It bans job applicants from employment for being too fat. A Victoria hospital, I just read that bit. The Citizens Medical Centre policy, instituted a little more than a year ago, requires potential employees to have a BMI of less than 35. Which is 210 pounds for someone who is 5'5". It states that an employee's physique, quote, should fit with a representational image or specific mental projection of the job of a healthcare professional, including an appearance, quote, free from distraction from hospital patients. Hospital patients are distracted by the presence of a fat person. They need to be schooled and educated on their bias. The majority of our patients are over 65, and they have expectations that cannot be ignored in terms of personal appearance. Yes, they can. They can be ignored because they're based in bigotry. Hospital Chief Executive David Brown said that in an interview. We have the ability as an employer to characterize our process and to have a policy that says what's best for our business and for our patients. Employment lawyers say Citizen Medical Center's hiring policy isn't against the law. Only the state of Michigan and 6 U.S. cities, including San Francisco and Washington, D.C., ban discrimination against the fat in hiring. So I was trying to find, so someone left a comment saying you can't get a job if you're over 35 BMI in Arab countries. I was trying to find that, but you know what? When you put BMI and weight loss into Google, the amount of weight loss stuff that comes up and the amount of nurse loses weight and now they are able to properly care for clients. Yeah, because they have a brand new brain that makes them be able to care for clients better because they have a smaller body. Yeah, all of that medical training was useless before because they had a bigger body. Mm-hmm. Donating body to science. This is from Vice. Most Americans are too fat to donate their bodies to science. Scott McPherson's mum had been dead for less than 24 hours when the phone rang with more bad news. Dolores McPherson's body was on its way to the University of New England's whole body donation program, but it had been turned back because of her BMI. Here I am, just hours after my mum's passes, and I'm going against her wishes because the school shut the door on her, Scott recalls. The medical school no longer wanted her despite a contract signed 12 years before her death. They told Scott his 84-year-old mum had been disqualified for becoming O-word. Fatness is one of just many reasons whole body donations are denied by schools like the University of New England. But in a nation where 2/3 of the population is fat, it's a growing concern, not least for would-be donors facing what amounts to the ultimate fat shaming. A lot of people who are fat, they've been so stigmatized during their lives, says Ronald Wade, director of the Maryland State Anatomy Board's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. Then the last thing they're told is, no one even wants your body. Commonly referred to as donating your body to science, whole body donations are used for both medical education and research at universities across the country. Medical students are required to take an anatomy course early on in their studies, dissecting cadavers to learn the ins and outs of the body, while those with surgical ambitions often end up working with cadavers later in their student studies to practice technical surgical techniques. Medical researchers use dead bodies too, studying the effect of various diseases and organs to advance medicine. To donate, however, requires meeting a number of criteria. Not regulated by the federal state governments in most areas, the guidelines for disqualifying a body vary from program to program. Institutional programs typically exclude donors who have suffered some sort of trauma, such as a car accident or limb amputation, and those who died of an infectious disease. Many use BMI as a guide for a donor size, disqualifying anyone with a BMI of over 35, while others spell out specific heights and weights. The direct donor program at IUSM tells donors they cannot exceed 6 foot tall and 200 pounds. Although the, quote, maximum acceptable weight of a donor may be lower based on the person's height. And Tallarico says that there is some, quote, wiggle room on a donor's size. The weight criteria at IUSM is on the higher end for institutions. Higher end at 200 pounds? That's tiny. Tallarico adds some schools limit donations to people at 180 pounds or smaller. And yet the CDC released data in summer of 2016 that showed the weight of the average American man is 195.7 pounds. As in, the average American man is not currently able to donate his body to science simply because of his weight. Wade says that there is a bona fide need for the bodies that are turned away in most places, however. His office places some larger bodies with medical researchers on occasion, but they're particularly useful in clinical training because they're more reflective than small donors of the patient population, everyone. From EMTs to trauma doctors to morticians will encounter in the field. No, sorry, I read that weird. Quote, in the ER, patients come in with different shapes and sizes. He explains, big people have cardiac arrests. They have falls. If you're practicing intubation, you don't want a little old emaciated person. The latter is a typical donor accepted by donor programs. Someone whose body has not suffered trauma that would exclude them and has either carried a smaller frame through life or seen BMI drop due to loss of muscle mass and fat from age and disease. Those people need treatment in emergency and operating rooms too, but the CDC fatness statistics indicate there are fewer of them than their larger peers. So why aren't the cadavers in medical schools reflective of that patient population as well? Anatomy classes are designed to teach future doctors what a body should look like, a marker of health. Yep. And you see how this is so systemic. Doctors are learning on thin cadavers. They're being told that thinness is the preference. Drugs are being tested on thin people. Medical devices, procedures, all of that is all focused on thin people. And so then when it gets to things not working on fat people, well, it doesn't take a genius to be like, why could that be? Why is it Dr. Dickhead from the IVF treatment is not able to do his job correctly? Because he has not been taught on fat bodies, and he has not been taught on fat bodies and told that's because fat bodies are wrong, and therefore fat people are turned away. Therefore fat people are not able to get pregnant when they need help. Then they turn to adoption, and then they say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to buy a house, and then they're turned away there. And they say, oh, I'm going to get this new job, and then they're turned away there. All legally. And there's a whole episode, like when I'm just thinking like, oh, so many different things about the work thing. There's a whole episode I did on workplace discrimination. Fat people are hired less, paid less, promoted less. Everything you expect to see, basically. Citizenship and immigration, which is, oh my goodness, getting fat people to not be able to live in countries, not be able to buy homes, not be able to reproduce, not be able to adopt children, not be able to get jobs, not be able to get insurance. So New Zealand, which is a notoriously fatphobic place, they were the people who, out of University of Otago, came up with the jaw wiring bullshit that came out a couple of years ago. Anyway, so two stories here. We have the first is from The Atlantic, the misguided logic of deporting fat people. So quote from that, a South African man is facing deportation due to his stature. After 6 years living in New Zealand, Albert Buitenhuis may have to go back to South Africa. The government decided he's too heavy to stay. Buitenhuis is now facing deportation after officials denied his request to renew his work visa. He and his wife claim to have no previous trouble with their annual visa renewals. New Zealand's immigration ministry maintains that at more than X pounds, his weight puts him at added risk for diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease, despite reports from his physician that he's on track track to correct a number of his health problems. The ministry remains concerned that weight-related issues will translate into hefty future costs. New Zealand claims that it is simply exercising its policy to hold immigrants to standards that minimise their burdens on the country's health services. This year's assessments include flagging and reviewing every immigrant with a body mass index greater than 35, meaning Buitenhuis no longer meets those standards. I wonder what happened. To him. This next one is from 2021. Too fat for New Zealand. Mum can't lose weight fast enough for immigration officials. A woman deemed too fat for New Zealand residency is gutted. A country committed to kindness is so brazenly shaming her and penalising her family. Doctors and medical tests are in agreement. Mondalia Buzendenhout. This is a different person. This is so funny. But their last names are so similar. Okay, the guy from the first story, Buitenhuis, and then her name is Beswedenhout. Mondalia Beswedenhout is in good health despite weighing. We don't need to know. However, an immigration New Zealand medical assessment determined her body mass index put her at, quote, severe risk category. Her application for residency was declined, putting her family's future in jeopardy. The 35-year-old immigrated to New Zealand with husband Donovan and children Donna and Damien, now 10 and 3, from South Africa in 2018, settling in Palmerston North. Donovan is a skilled migrant, meaning his job as a lineman is a difficult role to fill. Because of her rejection, no one in her family was granted residency. My whole family's life was in my hands and I blew it. It was all on me. It was really hard to swallow. It was my daughter who actually said to me, "Mum, they fat shamed you." An immigration NZ spokesperson told Stuff Beswedenhout's fatness alone was not grounds for declining a residency application, but a gallbladder removal in 2013 and tension headaches. What the fuck has that got to do with fatness? Tension headaches was evidence her fatness would be costly on the public health system. Oh, fuck off. That burden has been calculated at $41,000. $41,000. How is that some huge burden for a family of 4 with a skilled worker, 2 children who are going to be contributing to the economy, and the mum there too? 41,000. And that's their costs. That's their estimates. If she gets, I don't know, who knows what they've estimated it on. That apparently she's going to, her eyeballs are going to fall out because she's so fat, whatever. Okay, so she gained full-time employment in a government department and received a 3-year work visa, granting her access to the public health system. And the thought of now having to leave New Zealand after her family has established roots was, quote, heartbreaking and scary as hell, especially for their children. Her son was 7 months old when they left South Africa. He doesn't know any life outside of New Zealand, and her daughter was so upset that she had to call a mental health hotline. She said that she's been bigger her whole life and had been bullied in school for it, and now I'm being bullied by immigration. She took particular issue with the part on the assessment that commented on her previous weight loss attempts and how they were not convinced she could keep it up. She'd lost 22 kilos since moving to New Zealand. The pressure to lose weight since her residency application began has been overwhelming. To be honest, every now and again I lose my shit and just have to keep myself grounded. Dr. Kat Porzay, a senior lecturer in Massey University's Institute of Education and fat scholar, said that she was right to feel insulted. Weight is not a proxy for health. She said the use of body mass index to measure individuals was completely inappropriate and was without any kind of evidential basis. Porzay went through the same process in 2010 when her residency application was rejected for the same reason. It took 3 rounds of medical assessments and appeals for the government to believe Porzay was in good health. She is now a New Zealand citizen. BMI is not an indication of past, current, or future health. She pointed to the All Blacks, who no one would consider O-word, but they were classed that on the BMI scale. The Bezuidenhout's visas expire the end of July. Because Donovan's line of work is still in demand, they are hopeful renewal of their work visas. The quest to avoid a life in limbo will be pursued through an appeal of the residency decision. Yeah, so fucked up. As a Canadian, I'm not a citizen yet. I am a permanent resident. As a PR, they put you through medical assessments, like they give you a chest X-ray, and then you have to have a doctor, look at you. Didn't do anything, just chatted about the book I was reading. Anyway, at the time, my BMI was probably 34, maybe? Wild guess. Really no clue. And it wasn't brought up. I looked up for Canada and US to see if there has been restrictions, and none that I could see. So I don't know if this is just a New Zealand thing, hopefully, but you never know, right? You never know. I'm sure there's other countries, all countries in the world, there probably are other countries that behave like that. But that is honestly, as an immigrant, it is heart-droppingly anxiety-provoking to think that you're just going to have to leave. Imagine, you just have to leave the country that you've lived in. I've lived here for 13 years. To leave that country and go back to a country that might not feel like home anymore. So for me, the UK does not feel like home. I feel anxious to be there. And it would be devastating to have to leave a country, and to have to leave because of some bullshit reason like being too fat. I mean, I don't think that that's something that I'm going to have to face, but the folks in New Zealand, would they say a BMI of, 35 was automatically flagged? Jeez Louise. Yeah, 35. Automatically flagged. I mean, shit, the immigration officials are going to be and you're going to have to, like, normal immigration processes. As someone who's a British person, who's university educated, and doesn't have any mental health or neuro differences to make it more difficult to apply for immigration stuff. Actually, that's not true. Whatever. I'm able to apply is what I'm trying to say. I've been able to apply for stuff. I haven't applied for my citizenship yet because it's been stressing me out for years, literally years. So I was like, yeah, that's some mental health stuff. And something's going on there. Anyway, so I was able to do it, and that was really, really difficult to get to fill out those forms, and because it's such a high stakes thing. So that takes a lot of energy and know-how and finances and all sorts of stuff. And so Kat Porzay had to apply 3 times question in the decision that many times. How many people would just say, okay, that whole process was so traumatizing, I'm just going to leave? Probably a lot. I really can imagine that because, like my sister, she was in Canada. She is a master's educated social worker, which is in high demand in Canada. She made a simple mistake on her immigration papers. They said, you've got 2 weeks to leave. She had to leave. She never came back. She probably could have fought it, but, she was just like, she's dyspraxic. She struggles. So that's like, not dyslexic, but I think she probably is dyslexic as well. She struggles with that type of stuff. And she falls over and things like that, But anyway, so it's a privilege to be able to apply in the first place. Never mind, fight it. You have to have a certain privileges to be able to do that. It is such a thin-centric world. This cannot continue. We cannot continue treating fat people like this. And like a big trigger warning for any of these articles, I'm picking out the bits where they're not because they have counter arguments, right? A lot of the stuff that I've picked out, apart from Dr. Dickhead, is there's like, oh, should fat people be allowed to adopt? And then half the article is, yes, of course, that's fucked up. And then the other half is, of course not. It's fucked up to place children with fat people. So, trigger warning on that if you do go and read any of these links. I'm going to make a post about this on the Instagram, so check that out a few days after the episode is out. If you want to share this stuff with your people. If you've enjoyed this episode and appreciate the work that I do for free, then consider donating, subscribing to me on Ko-fi. Link is in the bio. Ko-fi is kind of like Patreon, but better. Thank you for listening to this episode. Thank you, Susanna, for inspiring me with this episode. If there are any episodes that you would like to see, subscribe on Ko-fi and send me a message over there, and I'll absolutely do my best to see if I can do that for you. And if you have any questions for the show, same thing. Go and subscribe on Ko-fi and then send me a massage. Yeah, because I really like talking about things which are relevant to you. And hey, take care of yourself. This shit's fucked up. I'm going to go and have a sip of my coffee and, I don't know, do some fist shaking. And if you experience any of this stuff, then I'm so sorry. You do not deserve this. It is not okay. And I hope that you're able to find solutions, even though many people are trying to keep barriers in place for you and people like you. That's not okay. Things are changing. All right. Well, I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'll see you in a while. Alligator, stay fierce, fatty. Goodbye.
Perfect.